All right, today we're getting hands-on with two of the absolute workhorses in Azure storage. We're talking about configuring Azure Files, for your shared drives, and Azure Blob storage for all that massive, unstructured data you've got lying around.
So let's paint a picture here, one you've probably seen before. Imagine you're the IT admin. You've got this massive video archive just sitting there. We're talking backups, raw footage, all your media assets. And then on the other hand, you have the marketing team's shared drive. It's used constantly, every single day, and they need it to work just like a local drive. So the big question is, how do you get both of these into Azure? Not just smartly, but without breaking the bank or frustrating all your users. That's the puzzle we're going to solve.
Okay, before we can even think about storing a single video or document, we've got to build the house for our data. So that brings us right to our first section, laying the foundation with Azure Storage.
And that foundation, it's called the storage account. Honestly, the best way to think about it really is as a digital house. It is the top-level container where everything lives. We're talking your blobs for that video archive, your file shares for the marketing team, and yeah, even things like queues and tables for your apps. The bottom line is, without a storage account, you can't store a single byte of data. It's that simple.
Now, when you go to create this house, you've got some pretty critical decisions to make right off the bat. First up, performance. Are you going to go with standard hard drives, which are super cost-effective, or do you need the blazing speed of premium SSDs? Then there's redundancy. How safe does this data need to be? Locally redundant, LRS, keeps you safe inside one data center, but geo-redundant, GRS, goes a step further and copies your data to a whole other region for, major disaster recovery. And finally, the account type. Honestly, just stick with general purpose v2. It's what Microsoft recommends, and it gets you all the latest features we're about to talk about. Easy choice. All right, foundation's built. So let's get back to that massive video archive. The perfect tool for that job is Azure Blob Storage. It's literally designed for exactly this kind of thing, huge amounts of unstructured data. So once you're inside your storage account, the very first thing you need to do is create what's called a container. You can just think of it like a big folder for all your blobs. And the process? It's super simple. You just go to your account, click on Containers, hit that plus button to add a new one, and then you give it a name. Now, quick tip here, the name has to be all lowercase. That one gets people all the time. Set your public access level, click Create, and boom, you're done.
So what are we actually putting inside these containers? Well, they're called blobs, which is short for binary large objects. This is the place for all your stuff. Images, video files, documents, server logs, backups, you name it. Basically, any file can be a blob. But here's a key thing to get your head around. Blobs exist in what's called a flat namespace. That means there aren't really folders inside of folders like you'd see on your computer. It's more like one giant directory inside each container.
Okay, so putting terabytes of video in the cloud is easy, but doing it without getting a giant bill, that's the real trick. And this next part, this is where Azure Blob Storage really shines, optimizing your blobs with tiers and lifecycle management.
So this is the million-dollar question, right? How do you slash your storage costs for all that data you rarely, if ever, touch? Like that raw video footage from a marketing campaign way back in 2020. You can't delete it, but you definitely don't want to be paying top dollar to store it.
The answer is something called access tiers. And look, the whole concept is a simple trade-off. You've got the hot tier for data you're using all the time. Here, storage costs are the highest, but actually accessing the data is the cheapest. As you go down the list to cool, then cold, and finally to archive, that flips. The cost to just let the data sit there plummets. Archive is dirt cheap, but the cost to read it goes way up. And with archive, you gotta remember it's offline. You might have to wait hours to get your data back. Oh, and watch out for that minimum duration. If you put something in cool, you're paying for at least 30 days, even if you delete it on day 2. It's a key detail.
Now, you might be thinking, am I supposed to manually move millions of files between these tiers? No way. That would be a nightmare. And that's exactly why Azure gives us lifecycle management. Think of it as your own automated cost-saving robot. It's a total set-it-and-forget-it policy engine. You just create the rules, and Azure does all the heavy lifting, automatically moving your data down the tiers or even deleting it when its time is up.
And look at how incredibly simple this is to set up. You just go into Lifecycle Management and add a new rule. It's all if-then logic. For example, you can say, if a blob hasn't been touched for 15 days, then move it to cool storage. Simple. And you can stack these rules. Add another one that says, if that same blob then isn't accessed for another 120 days, then move it all the way down to archive. You set it up once, and it just works in the background, saving you money. It is an absolute cost-saving powerhouse.
Okay, problem 1. The video archive is officially sorted. We've got it optimized and automated. Awesome. Now, let's switch gears and tackle that second problem, the shared marketing drive. We need this thing to feel just like a local server, and for that, we're going to use Azure Files.
And guess what? Creating a file share is just as straightforward as creating a blob container. You're in the same storage account, you just click on File Shares this time. Hit the plus button, give your share a name, and pick a tier. Now, the tiers here are a little different. You'll see things like transaction optimized, which is perfect for when you're doing a lot of tiny read and write operations, like, say, during a big data migration.
Okay, so you've created the share in the cloud, but how do your users actually use it? This right here is the magic trick. Azure literally hands you a simple PowerShell command. You just copy it, run it on a user's Windows computer, and bam, the cloud file share instantly appears as a network drive, like the Z drive. For your marketing team, absolutely nothing changes. It looks, feels, and performs just like the old server they had in the office.
And that really is the whole point of Azure Files. It gives you a fully managed file share up in the cloud. Fully managed means you don't have to worry about patching servers or replacing hard drives. And because it uses the standard SMB protocol, that's the language that Windows file sharing has used forever, it just works. It is the absolute perfect solution for those lift and shift projects where you just want to move an old file server into the cloud with as little pain as possible. Okay, we've set up both services, they're both running, but probably the most important skill you can have is knowing which tool to pull out of the toolbox for the right job. They both live in the same storage account, but they solve totally different problems. So let's do a final breakdown. Blob versus Files. Let's make this choice crystal clear. All right, let's break this down nice and simple. Think of it this way. Azure Blob Storage is for your objects. It's for your media files, your backups, all that data for big data analytics. You get to it over the web with HTTPS, and remember that flat structure we talked about? It's perfect for modern cloud-native applications. On the other hand, you've got Azure Files. You use this when you need a classic shared file server. It speaks that familiar SMB language, it gives you real folders and subfolders, and it is the go-to for lifting and shifting old servers or just giving your team a shared drive in the cloud.
So let's recap. We started by building our foundation, that storage account. Then we tackled that massive archive using Blob storage, making it super cost-effective with tiers and lifecycle rules. And finally, we seamlessly swapped out an old on-prem server with a brand new Azure file share. You now have the tools and the framework to make really smart storage decisions. Which leaves just one last important question for you to think about as you look at your own setup. Is your data in the right place?